niko na ushungu, siwezi kukula, hata kulala kutangu Raila Amolo Odinga kufe. Kulala imenishinda, hata kukula imenishinda, ndio naongea na sauti kidogo, sina nguvu. Sasa kitu mwenye naweza sema kwa watu wakaiji wa Kisumu na Kenya jumla na world, naweza sema hivi, Raila Amolo Odinga itaingia hapa kesho Kisumu, hapa katika hii uwanja ya Mamboleo yeye mwenyewe alijenga. Naomba watu wa vijana wote tukwe na amani.
On Saturday, October 18, the body of Raila Amolo Odinga arrived in Kisumu County, carried by a Kenya Defence Forces aircraft, marking a solemn milestone in a national grave.
This marks the return of the former Prime Minister, Raila Amolo Odinga, a final time to the place where he was born, and presumably the first one ferrying the top military officials. And here is the symbolic water salute, which you can see on your screens. And
thousands of mourners are lining roads, waving flags, chanting Zoe, Zoe, the air thick with grief, respect and the weight of his history. This was more than a procession. It was the closing of a chapter in Kenya's political soul, a statesman's farewell, a person's reckoning, a moment to reflect on the life, legacy and final journey of Raila Amolo Odinga. The early morning sky over Kisumu was heavy, clouds, mist and expectation. At 7:30 a.m., the military plane touched down at Jomo Kenyatta International Stadium, Mamboleo. The moment was cinematic. A casket draped in the national flag, escorted by a heavy security convoy, rolling into a city that had waited so long to say goodbye. From the stadium to the streets to the showground, every step of that journey was a sermon in mourning. In a region where Raila was not just a politician, but living emblem, the arrival was electric, grief, hope, memories, and reverence all intertwined. Before we follow that last journey, we must remember the man behind the name. Raila Odinga was more than a political force. He was a storyteller, a disruptor, the voice of many. He carried with him the promise of change, the burden of expectations, the scars of exile and betrayal. His life was not linear. He faced defeat, arrests, negotiations, and rebirth. Yet through it all, his voice remained resonant, defiant, and unyielding. He was called Tinga, Baba, Raila, each name carrying layers of connection between leader and people. Back to that morning ramp in Kisumu, the country watched. Thousands had poured into Mamboleo showground before dawn. Many had come the night before, sleeping on pavements, lighted by candles and drumming. They chanted Joey, Joey, a name synonymous with Raila, meaning a hero. The casket moved slowly into place. Ordinarily, in such moments, speeches stir emotions, but not here. The ODM party declared no speeches, only viewing. Why no speeches? Because this moment demanded silence, reverence over rhetoric. Because between grief and protocol, between love and order, the party sought to let people grieve without interruption. So the public viewed in solemn lines. KDF officers, party officials, dignitaries all stood as custodians of moment and memory. As Raila's body lay in state, the country watched. His body had already lain in Parliament building on October 17. Symbolic, for that building was his stage, his arena, his crucible. We recount, he spent years representing Langata constituency, crafting laws, pushing constitutional reforms and fighting for democracy, including the 2010 constitution itself. The president in a statement framed the significance of that moment. It was fitting for Raila to lie in parliament, where he had labored, debated, struggled, and shaped the republic. That was his house in a deep symbolic way. Late that night, thereafter, Raila's remains were transferred to Nyayo National Stadium, where the state funeral will stand. Heads of state, past presidents, international envoys, they came to pay homage, and in the stadium, the music and the mourning collided. Aside the formal halls, the people's mourning took on its own life. In Kondele, neighbors drummed, danced, and sang late into the night, telling the stories of Raila, of struggle, of solace. Elders, youth, children, they held tight memories, conversations, and tears. The procession to Bondo, Siaya County will be long. At every mile, people lined the road. In villages, towns, and rural stretches, the flags waved, voices rose, grief carried. He was from there, from that soil, that water, that air. That night, Sunday, October 19, will bring an overnight vigil where the final burial at Kango Kajaramogi, the ancestral grounds. They will be honoring more than a leader. They will be burying a history, a struggle, and a dream. This was not just a funeral, it was a state funeral with full military honors. The president ordered no less, fitting for a man who had shaped kin, party, and country. From aerial escort to gun salutes, every detail weighed in respect. Security forces, medical teams, volunteers, they moved behind the scenes. Changes of venues from Moi Stadium to Jomo Kenyatta grounds to allow more people. Order, calm, decorum, even in immense grief, became part of the ceremony. And the mourners, despite their numbers, largely held themselves in discipline and reverence. As the people viewed the body, many moments stood out. An elderly man shaking hands with party officials, wailing women, political youth, church groups all blending into one, unified into grief. The absence of speeches forced reflection, no oration, no breaking voices, only people communing with memory and laws, thinking of Raila as father, as a voice, as a symbol. In every line of mourners, you saw generation touch points. Those who watched him advocate from detention, those who walked protests at his side, those who saw freedom's cracks open and closed with his battles, and the young who learned of him by name, not by struggle, but now felt themselves part of his orbit. After the vigil, the Hazan convoy will move to Bondo, the fields, the lake, the trees, all part of his homeland. They will pass the Lakeshore Road, the small towns, the rivers, the humble homesteads. At every village, supporters will stand, flags will be raised, and voices will be crying, Baba. In Bondo, the early dawn, the crowd will be thickened. Fishermen, teachers, farmers, youth, all will pour into the compound. Mama Ida Odinga, the bereaved family, will stand firm, dignified, and heartbroken. They will bury him on Sunday, October 19, at Kango Kajaramogi, in the grounds of his ancestral home. In that moment, as the sun rose, the leader will rest among his people, his land, and his memory. To many, he was Baba, father to Nyanza, champion of the marginalized, voice of dissent, and keeper of promise. He was nicknamed Tinga of the people, and through the decades, he became that. He spoke for those without voice, he challenged power, he held hope. He was also human, frailty, struggle, and regret. He saw betrayal, he saw ambition and conflict. He made mistakes, and through it all, he remained central to Kenya's political conversation. Raila's commitment to democracy, equity, and justice will survive him. But so must his story, told in the streets, in schools, in conversations, and in grief. Today, when we recall his final journey, the plane, the crowds, the flag, the quiet lines at Mamboleo, we ask ourselves, what will we do with his legacy? Will we uphold what he stood for? Will we stay vigilant for justice? Will we remember that political life is also moral life? Every chant of Joey, Joey, in every raised fist, in every citizen who defends truth, Raila Odinga lives. May his journey rest in peace. May his name remain in Raisha's memory, and may his people never forget.